The way we walk is constantly reshaping our face. It seems small and insignificant, but trust me, by the end of this video, you will realize just how important it is. Most people in the modern world move in incorrect patterns. As a result, their posture falls, their face becomes less attractive over time, they age worse, feel worse, and don't become the best versions of themselves. And what we don't realize is that this isn't natural at all. This is all caused by external influences, from sitting in chairs, from sleeping on ultra soft mattresses, from hunching over on our phones, and from terrible posture. And nonetheless, at any age, at any time, we can recorrect this. So here is exactly how to walk correctly to restore natural beauty. The base of understanding this is first looking at nature. This is step one in terms of explaining it. You'll see that if you were to go on a street, most people in the modern world will have slight duck feet, which means that their feet are pointing outwards and there's no spiral motion in their movement. There's no flow. It's stiff, it's rigid, because the entire structure is tight because of sitting and moving in improper patterns. If we look at nature, if we look at babies crawling, leopards crawling, if we look at the elite sprinters, if we look at these patterns, we see that every baby that crawls with their head facing forward, their hips back, and shifting their body from side to side, becoming back chain dominant naturally. This allows the back part of the body to form and develop, which is responsible for up to 80% of the power we generate. Equally, it forms the fascial connections throughout, and you also see that nearly all young children, especially those that are chewing harder food, not wearing super tight small shoes and being barefoot, will have and sit in these positions where the heels are flicking and pointing away from their body, allowing the hips to internally rotate, allowing the ankles to decompress, and allowing the structure to actually relax and rest. You'll also compare this to the way that we rest in the modern world when we sit in the chair with our feet pointing outwards. When we sit and move in any of the ways that we do, we lose this pattern over time as bad habits accumulate. And so we see that there's this little spiral in nature. We see that this kind of prowling movement that we see in crawling. We can look at models walking on the runway with their feet overlapping, their heads staying straight, and their arms swaying from side to side. It seems provocative. It may seem crazy, but we're meant to move like this. It is actually natural, and the mechanism is very clear and simple, and I'll explain it right now. By the way, if you don't know who I am, my name is Oscar Patel. I transform myself from this to this completely naturally. Not only am I the only person in the world, as far as I know, to fully recorrect my crooked teeth naturally, improve my asthma, my sleep apnea, improve my forward head posture, and improve my appearance, but more importantly, I rewired the way I move, I rewired my posture, I fixed my flat feet, I released the fascia throughout, and as a result, I feel better, look better, and I'm healthier. And now I've helped thousands of other people do the same, to the point where we have the largest health-based paid community in the world called Health is Looks, that I run with my mum, my sister, and all of you beautiful people watching, where we have people of all ages from all kinds of places helping others, spreading this mission. Slowly, we're changing the world together. So if you like more routines, if you find this interesting, if you want access to more information and you want to make this a part of your life, join the community, it's worthwhile, trust me. QR codes on the screen, links in the description, but let's keep cracking. So we're talking about walking, we're understanding this pattern. Why and what is the science behind how this actually affects our face? It seems outlandish, it seems crazy. Well, firstly, let's look at a kind of chain reaction mechanism. If the feet remain straight, there's a correct arch and they don't collapse. This allows the anterior tibial tendon on the top of the foot to activate. Equally, it allows proper ankle dorsiflexion, meaning the knees don't cave in, also allowing the hips to internally rotate. It allows a foot to glute connection and allows this pathway to light up. This takes pressure off of the lower back, prevents the spine from compensating. Usually with people that have their feet turned outward, when the spine compensates, the head shifts forward because the body's one interconnected system. And when this happens, the tongue falls off of the roof of the mouth. The SCM muscle on your neck and the digastric muscle just here end up pulling the jaw backwards, trying to align the body. Again, because if you're shifting this pattern, you can imagine what your body's trying to do. It's trying to stabilize. So it tries to stabilize itself by negatively pulling our jaw back, which as a result clogs our airway, prevents the facial muscles from activating correctly. When our breath becomes less efficient, our posture collapses further, our rib cage doesn't expand, and equally our fascia throughout the entire system becomes tighter. Fascia being the layer of connective tissue that runs throughout our body, it becomes tighter, preventing proper movement, and equally as this becomes dehydrated, this wraps around every single muscle, meaning the muscles can't be activated properly. When the muscles can't get activated, the osteoblast production reduces, bones become thinner and weaker, and literally over time we become frailer, less attractive, we move less efficiently, our faces shift, and we are more prone to health issues and an entire cascade of things. And that's an entirely different way of thinking about things, especially in the modern world where we have so many different people specialized for different parts of the body. But we should treat, and I believe quite firmly, we should treat the body as one system. This will be part of the research that we're conducting. We're launching our own scientific study. This has also been clearly shown from the thousands of transformations that we now have, where people are creating miraculous results, completely changing themselves, not through me or anyone else doing it, but by working with themselves, with their own nervous system, and healing themselves. And this is kind of the true power of the human body. Not only is it so interconnected, but it also has the ability to recorrect, because that fascia that runs throughout the entire body, all of these mechanisms, while they've compensated in this way, it isn't natural. Go back to the babies, go back to the animals, go back to the models, go back to the sprinters. These patterns are ingrained within us. And so even if we've lost them, even if we're 90, no matter how old we are, we can regain them because it's stored somewhere within our body. Those are the mechanics. Equally, the feet connect directly up to the hyoid area through what is called the deep front line. The feet also connect up to the scalp through the superficial back line. We have different fascial lines running through our entire body, around 12 that have been shown, and these connect in direct chains through specific parts of the body. That's why you'll see that a lot of people who have a pelvic tilt will also have a double chin. That's why you'll see these patterns between people that have duck feet and a posterior posture where the hips sway forward, and as a result, lower tongue posture, and they're more prone to an overbite. Your posture quite literally shapes the entirety of your face, and I know that we're bought into this idea of genetics. I'm not denying everything completely, but I am saying that we swallow, we walk, we move, we breathe, we speak, and all of these things over time are directly influencing how we feel, look, and move. And it's all quite simple. You cannot separate the way you look from the way you move. So what is the actual pattern? What are we looking for when we're walking? Well, this is step 2. Let's break it down. Let's understand. This is where it's getting really good and really amazing. And this is hopefully where people's minds should be blown, but they shouldn't be blown. They should just be going back to the way that they knew things actually are. Again, as I say in every video, this should be intuitive. You shouldn't be listening to me or understanding or trusting me. It should be intuitive. It should be natural within your body. This should make sense to every single human. When we look at a beautiful sunset, it's the same thing here as when we look at a beautiful face. I don't believe there is any difference. I believe beauty is natural. I believe it is just as natural as the sun setting or a river flowing. I don't think we should be constantly looking at our faces as mirrors that we created, but I do think we should be constantly doing habits that make us feel good and are healthier, and as a result, shift our face as a byproduct. Looks is always the byproduct, never the direct goal, and that's the key focus always, and that's what also will allow people to not get too attached to it, to actually, ironically, get better results. And it was absolutely key for me in my transformation, where I hyperfixated on looks and appearance initially, eventually coming to the correct conclusion that health is looks, not the other way around. Looks isn't health, health is looks, okay? So when we're looking at walking, and again, I'd like to shout out a couple people, and there are loads of other great, amazing people that speak about this, but a little shout out to Gota as well, that have pioneered quite a lot of this and seen a lot of these patterns, and also a shout out to nature for just creating the bodies as perfectly as they have. Ideally, what we're looking for usually is straight feet, if we can. I don't think it's the most important thing. I don't think it's the number 1 on the list, because I think there are examples of athletes who are extremely athletic without straight feet, but I do think it does directly improve our looks and our posture. And so if our feet are straight, that allows a proper bow to form between the foot, knee, and hip. And as a result, that cascades up the chain where the tongue usually then rests on the roof of the mouth. And if we go back further in time, if we go to periods like the 1960s, you see that people have naturally straighter feet, and you see that this pattern starts usually with modern shoes, where we constrict the toe splay, the toes go like this, and as a result, the foot collapses, they point outwards to compensate in order to fit in, and this creates an entirely different chain reaction. So that's the first kind of key, straight feet. Now, when we say straight feet, that doesn't mean perfectly straight. It doesn't mean, anything over the top. Just visualize it as a rough image. And then we also have the heel flicking away. Every step we take, that heel should flick away, allowing a proper spiral to form and energy to be efficiently transferred throughout the body. If we look at a tennis player swinging or a golf player hitting a ball, that back heel should and usually does flick away, allowing energy to be efficiently transferred throughout the entirety of the body. Remember, when we swing our arms and hit a ball, that's why we're always saying, check the footwork, move your feet. It starts in the base of the body. That's how we transfer the energy from the ground and use our bodies efficiently to move through time and space. And so that heel needs to flick away. That's a necessity. And so when we talk about straight feet, this is what we should be looking for first and foremost, that heel flicking away, and that's what we want to get back. If you look at as people get older, almost everyone loses this. You really will not find people who are walking with their heel flicking away as time passes on, because we lose and our fascia becomes hydrated as time accumulates. And so you imagine that obviously part of this is aging, but also most of this is unnatural. It's about time accumulated in chairs, time accumulated breathing through our mouths, time accumulated consuming processed food, time accumulated indoors under artificial lights, like I am right now trying to record this video. As all of these things accumulate, these bad habits accumulate, of course this changes the shape of our fascia and the structure that wraps around our entire body, shaping our posture, meaning that over time it becomes more difficult to maintain these habits. That's the second note. The third note that we're looking for is the knee pointing outwards. The knee caving in, again, is a massive issue. We don't want pigeon toes. That's not what we're looking for. If the knee caves in, then we're not transferring energy properly. That doesn't mean that when we stand, the knee should point out. It means that when we land, when we're supporting ourselves, when we're bracing, that knee should bow out to allow the energy to be efficiently transferred up the chain. I think that's a really important principle as well. And again, I'm going to go over the very basic principles because I want to link it back to what I know best, which is appearance and looks. But generally, these principles should be maintained when we're walking equally. I do think that we also need some kind of activation in the plantar fascia. I do think we should be looking for the tendons in the feet being activated. And I do think that people should have a sense of stiffness within their ankles, as well as being able to retract their toes. But these are topics for further discussion. We can show a quick video of retracting the toes versus scrunching the toes. You don't need to be constantly retracting your toes, and usually this is a byproduct of adapting to modern shoes, but inevitably we all already have, and so it is important to be able to do this. If you can't, it means your feet really haven't properly adapted. So look at this video where you can see me retracting the toes rather than scrunching. Scrunching, retracting. And we want to retract, create tension in the foot and activate the plantar fascia. And then from there, we can then realize that we can create a foot to glute connection. When we have this, we take pressure off the lower back. And as a result, the hips go back, the head and crown go forward, and this is where things get really beautiful. The moment you're able to walk properly and maintain these correct cues and habits, then you can take the next step, hips being back, head being forward, tongue being on the roof of the mouth, and breathing backwards into your nose, allowing the energy and air to transfer efficiently down, 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 and out through the rib cage. And as a result, all of that negative cycle and pattern gets completely undone. Instead of the knees collapsing, instead of the head falling forward, you're undoing the entire system and you're rebuilding the body as it was always meant to be. And if you do this even right now, if you just practice a couple of these cues, you'll instantly feel better. Again, because it's natural, it's memorized within our bodies, it's something that we're meant to do. If we look at someone's feet and them walking without ever looking at their face, we will know who's more attractive. We'll naturally associate these things, and that shouldn't be mesmerizing to people. It's because it's an indicator of health. If people move better, they live longer, they have better posture. If we live longer, then that's survival, it's biological. Same reason that we find certain facial features attractive. And it's also the reason that athletic people end up being more attractive, because all of these things are interlinked and they're all one. Health is looks in every sense of the word. So that's the basic cues for walking. And then now we need to understand exactly some of the practical things we can apply to get there. This is where things are getting good. Again, it depends on the person I'm speaking to, but I'm going to generalize it towards everyone, especially if we look at my mum's case. She had very bad bunions. She really worked on the spiral fascia. She was trying to build this foot to glute connection and this consistency. I think an important note from my perspective is to understand that while we need to recorrect the structure and work with the body and undo certain exercise, or not undo, but activate certain processes to allow the body to work properly. And people say that you shouldn't perfectly mimic movement because you should do it naturally as a byproduct of, proper structure. But I do also think that the fascia is the structure that most connects the mind and the body. And as a result, if we don't clearly visualize something in the mind, then I think it's very difficult to actually then get to the point where we can naturally encourage the body to do it, because I think we become biased to negative actions. And I think if we're surrounded in a world where everyone's walking improperly and we grow up and we are creatures of creatures of imitation, where we mimic all of the people around us. If we're constantly exposed to people with negative habits because that's what the modern world's created, then even no matter how perfect our habits are, it's become kind of diluted our understanding of how things should actually function, which should be ingrained within us, but it's kind of fading. And so I think that it is important to actually look at these patterns in nature. I think it is important, even if you don't have the correct mechanics, to actually support walking straight subconsciously. I do think it is important that people practice it so that you can be very clear in your mind what you're working towards, and as a result get a feeling for it, so that when you do improve the structure, you understand what you're working towards, you connect the mind and body, and the fascia will work and function quicker as a result. And that to some may be a slightly odd take, but I think it's the way things have to function. The mind always has full control of the body. Why can there be exceptions to people having duck feet and people being exceptional athletes? Because I think the mind still controls everything. And so I think that if people are set in a way of thinking, if people actually have a connection between the mind and body, then regardless of how the body actually moves and operates, the mind still has control and is able to create the output that you think you're capable of. The issue is that as the fascial connection becomes tighter, the connection between the body and the mind becomes weaker, and as a result, we need to rebuild that in order to actually get to the point where our minds have control again. That's the kind of in between, that's the kind of point. And so don't get anything twisted, don't hyper optimize and only focus on movement patterns and judge other people and look around for it. Focus on yourself, recorrect the inside, and let it follow as a proper understanding. Don't let anything, as with everything, become toxic in nature. Just understand that kind of principle. So what are some of the things that we can do to recorrect and move in the right direction? Well, with that, I think practicing is important, more important than people think, purely because that mind-body connection that many people neglect. But also, I think it is important to begin by training the nervous system. So training longer isometric holds, adapting to these positions and allowing the nervous system to quite literally shake and adapt to new resting positions, I think is really important. I know this firsthand with the face and with a lot of practices here, where ideally you'll see that a lot of people develop twitches throughout their lives, many children now, because of blue light exposure, because of tight fascia, because of terrible posture, where they start opening their mouths, they start twitching their eyes. Like I used to have quite a lot of these things because there's tension in the body, and then the body's trying to release it by pandiculating, but it's unable to because this tension is constantly accumulating from sitting and hunching and just chewing soft food. Shaking and resting may seem negative, but I think it's really positive. And I think it's your nervous system adapting to the way that it was meant to be. At least with me, when I'm shifting my face, when I naturally expanded my palate, when I shifted my face upwards and forwards, I'm releasing all of this tension previously stored. My face started kind of moving, twitching, shifting, and you can feel that your body kind of wants to unravel. And this is what you should be building towards. When you hold any of these positions, like a basic lunge position, and you keep the heel off of the ground and you try and activate the tendon on the top of your foot, you hold this position as long as you can initially, just so you can get a feel for what the body's capable of, so that you can kind of progress and push past these limits and make sure your nervous system feels safe, because that's the real key to it all. Just as these patterns have evolved in order for us to be less injury prone, in order for us to move better and survive longer, a lot of this is also proving what's actually possible to your body. So if we do not progress, if we do not kind of understand our limits and see what's actually possible, then imagine your limits up here and we're working towards up here, then we're not actually operating anywhere near where we should. And so I think that's important for everyone, just to get a feel of where they're at and to realize that, okay, my nervous system's adapting, it feels limited at this point, but I can go way beyond, I can shift. So longer isometric holds is the first kind of key step. You can do this with your feet, you can do this in a lunge position, you can even do this with a base thumbpulling position. Retract the toes if you can, if not, just scrunch them, that's good enough. Tense your feet, make sure your posture's back chain dominant, and then apply pressure with your thumbs onto the palate. Hold it with 60% force and hold it for as long as you can until your body starts to move. And you want your body to move naturally. People talk about gut instinct. It's the same thing you find here. Your body will adapt naturally because your fascia is basically this living, real structure. So allow it to shift. And again, it seems weird with some of this understanding, but the key, I think, is not me speaking with absolute facts and certainty. I think the key lies in people playing around with these exercises with their body. So try it right now as you're listening to me, explore and feel. And again, here are some more transformations to back up what we're doing. And this literally is just the start. If people can get involved in this right now and explore these topics, the limits are absolutely endless. This, I'm so confident, will be the future, because we will have to go back to the way we were meant to live. But most importantly, we will need to recorrect. And so we need to work with our bodies to recorrect. Nothing external can do that. And this is the absolute key. So longer isometrics, those are a couple base positions. From there, I think it's also absolutely necessary to decompress the structure, to spend as much time moving and sitting on harder surfaces as possible. I think this is the most important second step. I'll break down one more after this, but this is so important to emphasize. Spend time sitting on the floor, spend time if you can sleeping on the floor, or at least on a futon. Spend more time moving on the floor, spend more time resting on your shins. Adapt to the floor, and the fact that we've adapted to sofas and cushions and mattress toppers, people think this is comfy, and obviously it may feel initially comfy. What's actually happening are your muscles are constantly compensating to hold yourself in this position. That's why we wake up sore, that's why we end up feeling flabbier, that's why our bodies start collapsing, because these silent things compound because we've adapted towards them. We're meant to have adapted to harder surfaces, to nature, to the ground, so at the very least you don't need to spend the entire day sitting on the ground, but if you can spend up to 30 minutes in base positions, like some of the ones you see on the screen, in Seiza, in one leg up Seiza position, sleeping on the floor, always sleep on your side, by the way, that's absolutely fundamental. Keep these same patterns in mind. If you want to have this natural spiral when you walk, and you want to walk correctly like models do, like amazing people do, then you cannot sleep on your back. You cannot rest in these positions where your feet are pointing outwards. That's the biggest telltale sign that the fascia is switched off, for lack of better words, that the body's collapsing. And so even if you lie on your back and you feel good, your tongue's not on the roof of the mouth, your feet are pointing outwards, these are the two key cues for actually activating the fascia. And therefore you know clearly and intuitively from this line of logic that regardless of what people think about sleeping on one side and lymphatic drainage shifting to one side, it's completely and utterly ridiculous. And so your tongue can provide more pressure than anything else. It will make sure your face stays asymmetrical. You can switch sides if you want. Sleep on your side, spend more time on the floor, and adapt in these ways. It was very difficult for me at first to hold positions like Seiza. It was easier for my sister, but more difficult in other positions. You'll understand and feel where your body stores tension. For me, it was in my hips. For one of my closest friends, it was in his quads. And for other clients, you'll see that it's in their shins, their ankles, their hamstrings, their abs. For some people, they can't have a natural curve in their back when they sit in these positions. They end up having to hunch forward because they don't have this natural curve in their back, because they've overdeveloped the muscles in their lower back, because they haven't developed their glutes. And so you'll see the way your body begins to compensate, and as you have a better understanding for how all of this functions, then you'll be able to clearly understand how to rebuild it back to you. And again, this is the importance of things like the community, but once you have a clear understanding of how to operate, and once you kind of realize how powerful this truly is, you can join the community, you can get an accountability coach that can help answer your questions, you can get access to live calls where you can ask me, my mum, my sister, any of the coaches direct questions, and you can post things where there's like-minded people that are willing to help, that have had transformations, that understand the information, and it becomes this beautiful cycle of spreading more positivity, helping more people. Honestly, it is amazing if you join. It is probably the most pleasant and brilliant place on the entire internet. It is beyond amazing just how amazing, it is beyond crazy just how many people, how many different kinds of people there are, how supportive it is. It's mind-blowing. And so, yeah, again, don't want to push it too hard, but I highly urge everyone to join. Nonetheless, get stuck in with this stuff. And key notes when you are resting on the floor, keep your heels flicking away as a base position. Try and keep your tongue on the roof of the mouth. Walking is restoring natural beauty. Your tongue is the cherry on top to this entire cake. If we do not keep our tongue on the roof of the mouth, no matter how well we move, it's pointless. It's still adhesions, and we're still cutting and sectioning off this entire area. That's why I think there can be brilliantly athletic people. I think that's why people can have brilliant fascia in their legs, but then they can have adhesions cutting off the rest of the body. And I think you'll see with a lot of people, the most important part of the body is actually the face, because this is the direct gateway to the breath. The breath hydrates the entire structure. And so even though it seems like the feet are the base of the body, I actually think ground zero is your palate. But again, that's topic for another discussion. Spend more time on the floor, decompress the body, make sure the heels are flicking out, make sure your tongue's on the roof of the mouth, and this will take you a very far way. And I really urge people to try and practice. I'm going to make a more in-depth video on how to taper this on, the importance and more in-depth details about sleeping and all of the kind of quirks and questions, but try sleeping on at least a harder mattress initially, and then move to a futon, and then eventually move to the floor. It seems crazy, it seems ridiculous, but it's exceptionally powerful, and also it's frictionless. So people worry about doing these things. Obviously, maybe you don't want to sleep with your partner on the floor, you don't need to go crazy, but at least get a harder mattress. But generally, it should be logical. You know, these things have no friction. You don't need to spend more time doing them. It shouldn't be that crazy. The only thing holding people back is their own minds and their preconceptions about things, how things have to work because of how we've been taught in the modern world. But if we realize that we're walking incorrectly, we're moving incorrectly, we're unhealthier than we ever have been, then how can we not question everything else going on around here? So that's step 2, a really important step. And step 3 is, again, connecting the feet to the face and to the upper body. Make sure you have this connection. Your feet should mimic your palate. The issue is that the face stores so much tension. We chew, we swallow, we breathe. We do a lot of things with our facial muscles and with our breath that honestly are actually isolated to the face and not conducive to the rest of the body. So it's even more important that we tackle the face individually. If we do not do myofunctional exercises, if we do not work with the palate, if we do not rewire our breathing, then the structure ends up relapsing, which is a really important concept. If you train your feet and you play around and you build fascial connections and you decompress and you work, but then you do not have the breath, the palate, and the tongue posture to reinforce this structure, then there's no point, because your body's still out of alignment. Your body will inevitably have to compensate, and it will only work when everything is connected, when you've treated it as one system. There's no point having straight feet without a wide palate. There's no point having a wide palate without straight feet. Everything is one structure, and this is how we're meant to integrate. So the easiest things that people can try, and we have loads of videos on the channel, and we'll release more videos in the very near future, are exercises all to do with, at the very least, activating the nervous system through the facial muscles, so something like the cheek puff and suck. You'll also see that I'm not sure if it's being released soon, but my mum and sister have dropped their own YouTube video with a 10-minute follow-along routine as well, which is super exciting. Highly recommend everyone to check that out. I'll leave the link in the description somewhere, but support the channel. We're really going to build this out. I want families involved. I want generations involved. I want everyone spreading this mission and realizing what's actually possible. If we can combine this with everything that's going to come in the near future, the possibilities are indeed endless. But practice that exercise and equally practice massaging your palate and releasing the palatal fascia. This is really important. Again, I have a more in-depth routine of this in the school community, as well as a full body fascia routine where you can integrate all of these exercises and do more in-depth things. There's always more progression. Everyone needs to have things personalized, again, because we store adhesions differently, we breathe differently, and there's an endless loop, rabbit hole that people can go down coming to the right answers. But you can also just join the community, save infinite amounts of time, have more accountability, actually take action, and then go from there. And it's a brilliant way to start to integrate. And then even from there, you know, if someone wants access to one-to-one coaching, if you really want to do things properly, you can find out more information about that by joining the school and messaging your coach. That's the rough program, that's the rough setup, that's the kind of trajectory. We see these patterns in nature. That's a rough explanation of how things work, some exercises and understanding how the body integrates. Obviously there's a lot more. I know this is a longer video, but this is still the tip of the iceberg. Remember what's possible regardless of what your limitations are. Remember, the mind controls the body. That comes first. So have faith, have conviction, do things properly, integrate this within your life, help other people around you, and go for it. And I do truly believe that if we recorrect the way we walk, we will restore the natural beauty we were always meant to have. Also, another quick thing, more transformations on the screen just because I'm so unbelievably proud of these people. But remember, health is looks. Thank you for watching.